Hello, this is Dr. Rashid. I'm going to present to you today how to read and critique medical literature. In this presentation, we have three objectives. Number one is to be able to identify different sources of medical literature and to learn the key measures to assess a manuscript or a study, and also how to interpret results. Starting with where to find medical literature. There are several resources and databases available for finding medical literature. Here are some popular options. PubMed. PubMed is a free database maintained by the National Library of Medicine, which indexes over 30 million citations and abstracts from medical and life science literature. Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a search engine that indexes scholarly literature, including medical and scientific research articles, conference papers, theses, and dissertations. Cochrane Library. The Cochrane Library is a collection of systemic reviews and meta-analysis of healthcare interventions which are based on high-quality evidence from randomized controlled trials. Embase. It is a biomedical database that indexes over 30 million citations and abstracts from peer-reviewed journal, conference proceedings, and other sources. ClinicalTrials.gov. It is a registry and results database of clinical trials conducted in the United States and around the world. Scholastica is a web-based software platform for managing academic journals with integrated peer review and open access publishing tools. Medline is a bibliographic database of the National Library of Medicine that indexes over 5,000 medical and life science journals. Web of Science is a database that indexes over 20,000 scholarly journals in the science, social sciences, and humanities, including medical and health sciences journals. Scopus is a database of abstracts and citations for scholarly literature, including medical and scientific research articles, conference papers, and book chapters. In addition to these resources, many medical societies, publishers, and academic institutions also provide access to their own journals and databases. It is important to check if you have access to these resources through your institution or library. Evaluate study quality and rigor. When assessing a study, there are several measures that can be used to evaluate its quality and rigor. Here are some common measures to consider. Study design. The study design is an important factor in assessing a study validity. Different types of studies have different strengths and weaknesses, and some are better suited to answer certain research questions than others. For example, randomized controlled trials are generally considered the gold standard for evaluating interventions, while observational studies are more useful for exploring associations and identifying potential risk factors. Sample size. The sample size is a critical factor in assessing the statistical power of a study. Studies with a small sample size may not have enough power to detect meaningful differences or associations, while studies with large sample sizes are more likely to produce reliable and generalizable results. However, a sample that is too large can also lead to problems such as increased cost and logistical difficulties. Sampling methods. The sampling method used in a study can affect its representativeness and generalizability. A study that uses a random or a probability-based sampling method is more likely to produce a sample that is representative of the population of interest, while studies that use non-probability sampling methods such as convenience sampling may have a higher risk of bias. Data collection methods. The methods used to collect data can affect the validity and reliability of a study findings. Studies that use validated or standardized measures are generally more reliable than studies that rely on self-reported or subjective measures. Data analysis methods. The statistical methods used to analyze the data can affect the reliability and validity of the study's findings. It is important to evaluate whether the statistical methods used are appropriate for the study design. Studies that use appropriate statistical tests and control for confounding variables are more likely to produce reliable and valid results. Ethics. The ethical considerations of a study are important to consider, including whether the study obtained informed consent from participants, protected their privacy and confidentiality, and minimized the risk of harm. Look for potential conflict of interest. It is important to consider whether the authors of the study have any conflict of interest that may influence the results. Conflict of interest can arise from financial relationships with industry, personal biases, or other factors. Reporting. The clarity and transparency of a study reporting is also important in assessing its quality. Studies should provide sufficient detail in their methods, results, and limitations to allow other researchers to evaluate their findings and replicate their study. By considering these measures, you can better evaluate the quality and rigor of a study and determine whether its findings are reliable and relevant to the research question. Measures to assess study originality. Assessing the originality of a study can be important to determine its contribution to the field of research. Here are some measures to consider when evaluating a study's originality. Research question. The research question should be clear and specific and should not have already been answered by previous studies. A study that addresses a novel research question is more likely to be considered original. Literature review. A thorough literature review is important to demonstrate the originality of a study. The study should build on previous research in the field, but should also identify gaps in the existing literature and explain how the study addresses those gaps. Methodology. The methodology used in a study can also contribute to its originality. A study that uses innovative or novel methods or adapt existing methods in a new way may be considered more original than a study that uses conventional methods. Results. The results of the study should be interpreted in a way that contributes new insights to the field. The study should identify new patterns or relationships that were not previously known, or provide evidence that challenges existing theories or models. Discussion. The discussion section should highlight the original contributions of the study and explain how they add to the existing literature. The study should also identify potential implications of the findings for future research or clinical practice. Citation analysis. Analyzing the citation of a study can also provide insight into its originality. A study that is frequently cited by other researchers in the field may be considered more original than a study that is rarely cited. By considering these measures, you can better evaluate the originality of a study and its contribution to the field of research. However, it is important to know that originality alone does not necessarily equate the scientific quality, and studies should also be evaluated based on their rigor, validity, and relevance to the research question. Scientific quality. Assessing the scientific quality of a study is critical to determining its validity and reliability. Here are some measures to consider when evaluating the scientific quality of a study. Study design. The study design should be appropriate to answer the research question and minimize the risk of bias. Randomized controlled trials are generally considered the gold standard for evaluating interventions, while observational studies are more useful for exploring associations and identifying potential risk factors. Sample size and representativeness. The sample size should be large enough to evaluate sufficient statistical power to detect meaningful differences or associations. The sample should be also representative of the population of interest to ensure generalizability of the findings. Data collection methods. The methods used to collect data should be reliable and valid and should minimize the risk of measurement error or bias. Studies that use validated and standardized measures are generally more reliable than studies that rely on self-reported or subjective measures. Data analysis methods. The statistical methods used to analyze the data should be appropriate to the research question and should control for potential confounding variables. Studies that use appropriate statistical tests and provide transparency in their analysis are more likely to produce reliable and valid results. Ethics. The study should comply with the ethical standards and protect the rights of and welfare of the study participants. This includes obtaining informed consent, protecting privacy and confidentiality, and minimizing the risk of harm, and also have an IRB approval. Reporting. The clarity and transparency of a study reporting is important to assessing its scientific quality. Studies should provide sufficient details on their methods, results, and limitations to allow other researchers to evaluate their findings and replicate their study. Peer review. The study should undergo rigorous peer review by independent experts in the field to ensure scientific quality and accuracy. By considering these measures, you can better evaluate the scientific quality of a study and determine whether its findings are reliable and relevant to the research question. Measures to assess study reliability. Reliability is the extent to which a study produces consistent and stable results over time and across different contexts. Here are some measures to consider when evaluating reliability of a study. Study design. The design should be appropriate and well-structured, with a clearly defined research question, hypotheses, and methods. The design should minimize the risk of bias and confounding and should be able to provide consistent and reliable results. Sample size and representativeness. The sample size should be sufficient to provide adequate statistical power, and the sample should be representative of the population of interest. The selection process should be transparent and systemic, with well-defined inclusion and exclusion criteria. Data collection methods. The methods used to collect data should be reliable, valid, and consistent across different contexts. The instruments used to collect data should be standardized, and the process of collecting and recording should be systemic and transparent. Data analysis method. The statistical methods used to analyze the data should be appropriate, reliable, and consistent. The results should be presented in a clear and transparent manner with well-defined statistical measures and confidence intervals. Replication studies. Replication studies can help assess the reliability of a study by determining whether the results can be produced across different contexts and by different researchers. Internal consistency. Internal consistency refers to the degree of agreement among different measures or items used in the study. If the study uses multiple measures to assess the same construct, they should produce consistent results. Inter-rater reliability. If the study involves multiple raters or observers, inter-rater reliability measures the degree of agreement among them. This can be assessed using some specific statistical measures such as Cohen-Kappa or intra-class correlation coefficient. By considering these measures, you can better evaluate the reliability of a study and determine whether its findings are consistent and stable over time and across different contexts. Assessing study validity. It involves evaluating the accuracy and reliability of a research study, and here are some measures to assess study validity. Internal validity. Internal validity refers to the degree to which a study accurately measures what it's supposed to measure. To assess internal validity, consider the research design, the methods used to collect data, and potential sources of bias that could affect the study results. External validity. External validity refers to the degree to which the findings of a study can be generalized to other populations or settings. To assess external validity, consider whether the study sample is representative of the population of interest and whether the study finding can be replicated in other contexts. Reliability refers to the consistency and stability of study results. To assess reliability, consider the methods used to collect and analyze the data, the sample size, the statistical methods used to analyze the data. Construct validity. Construct validity refers to the degree to which a study accurately measures the constructs or concepts that it is intended to measure. To assess construct validity, consider the measures used to operationalize the constructs of interest and the extent to which they can capture the intended meaning. Phase validity. It refers to the extent to which a study appears to measure what it is supposed to measure. To assess phase validity, consider whether the study methods and measures are appropriate for the research question being addressed. Content validity refers to the degree to which a study adequately covers all relevant aspects of the research question. To assess content validity, consider whether the study measures and methods are comprehensive and appropriate for the research question being addressed. Criterion validity. Criterion validity refers to the degree to which a study accurately predicts future outcomes or measures. To assess criterion validity, consider whether the study measures are reliable and whether they accurately predict future outcomes and measures. These measures can be used to assess the validity of different types of studies, including experimental studies, observational studies, and surveys. By evaluating the validity of a study, researchers can make informed decisions about the accuracy and reliability of the study's findings. Reproducibility. It means whether the results in the same target populations are reproducible from one location, example study site, to another within the same region, example if it is the United States of America, European Union, or Asian Pacific region. To assess study reproducibility, we have several measures. Study design should be clearly defined and well documented, and should include details about the research question, hypotheses, methods, and data analysis plan. The design should be rigorous and appropriate for the research question. Also, it is important to evaluate whether the study design and measures are adequate for minimizing bias. The sample size and representativeness. The sample size should be large enough to provide sufficient statistical power to detect meaningful differences or association, and the sample should be representative of the population of interest. The inclusion and exclusion criteria should be clearly defined, and the process of selecting participants should be transparent. Data collection methods. The methods used to collect data should be reliable, valid, and well documented. The data collection instruments should be standardized, and the process for collecting and recording should be transparent. Data analysis methods. The statistical methods used to analyze the data should be clearly well defined, and the code used for data analysis should be available for others to review and reproduce. The results should be presented in a clear and transparent manner, and the study should include information about potential sources of bias or confounding. Replication studies. The study should be replicable, meaning that other researchers should be able to reproduce the study using the same methods and data. Replication studies can help confirm the reliability and validity of the original findings and can identify potential sources of error or bias. Open science practices. Open science practices such as pre-registration, open data sharing, and open access publication can enhance the reproducibility of a study by increasing transparency and accountability. These practices can also facilitate collaboration and promote scientific progress. By considering these measures, you can better evaluate the reproducibility of a study and determine whether its findings are reliable and can be replicated by others. Generalizability. Evaluate the study population. It is important to consider whether the study population is representative of the population of interest. For example, if a study is conducted on a specific population, such as patients with a certain disease, the results may not be generalizable to the wider population. Assessing study generalizability. Assessing the generalizability of a study refers to the degree to which the study can be replicated or generalized to other contexts. Here are some measures that can be used to assess study generalizability. Sample size, sampling methods, replication of a study, and study design are all important measures to assess study generalizability. External validity, which is the degree to which the findings of the study can be applied to other population, settings, or contexts. This can be assessed by examining the characteristics of a study population and comparing them to other populations, or by examining the study setting and comparing it to other settings. The statistical analysis and data quality are also another important measures. The quality of the data collected should be assessed to ensure that it is correct and reliable. If the data quality is poor, the findings may not be generalizable. Overall, a combination of these measures can be used to assess the generalizability of a study. And by considering these measures, researchers can design studies that are more likely to produce findings that are robust and generalizable to other contexts. Assessing study bias and ensuring quality control are critical steps in producing reliable and trustworthy research results. Here are some measures that can be used to assess study bias and ensuring quality control. Randomization is a process of selecting study participants at random to ensure that each participant has an equal chance of being assigned to a treatment group or a control group. This helps to reduce selection bias, which can occur when the study participants are not representative of the target population. Blinding. Blinding refers to the practice of keeping participants and/or researchers unaware of which group they belong to. This can help to reduce measurement bias, as researchers might unconsciously influence the results based on their expectations. Control group. A control group is a group of participants who do not receive the intervention being tested. Control groups help to ensure that any changes in the outcome being measured are actually due to the intervention being tested rather than other factors. Standardization. It refers to the practice of using standardized procedures and measures to ensure that the data is collected consistently across all participants and/or researchers. This helps to reduce measurement bias and increase the reliability of the study results. Quality control checks. Quality control checks involve regularly monitoring the study data to ensure that it is accurate and reliable. This can include checks for missing data, outliers, and errors in data entry. Peer review. Peer review involves having other experts in the field review the study design, methods, and findings to ensure that they are valid and reliable. Peer review is an important step in ensuring that study bias is minimized and that quality control measures are in place. Transparency and reproducibility. Researchers should clearly document their study design, methods, and findings to ensure that the study can be reproduced by other researchers. This helps to ensure the study results are valid and reliable. Overall, a combination of these methods can be used to assess study bias and ensure quality control. By implementing these measures, researchers can produce research that is more reliable and trustworthy, which can help to advance the field and improve the quality of care for patients. Interpreting study results. It requires an understanding of the who, what, and when, and why of the study. Here are some specific considerations for each of these. Who? Consider the study population and whether the results are generalizable to other populations. For example, if the study was conducted on a specific age group or gender, the results may not be applicable to other groups. The what? Look at the outcome measures and how they are measured. Consider whether the outcome measures are relevant to the research question and whether the methods used to measure them are valid and reliable. When? Consider the duration of a study and whether the results are applicable over the long term. If the study only followed participants for a short period of time, the results may not be applicable for the long term. Why? Consider the research question and the hypotheses being tested. Look at whether the study design and methods were appropriate for addressing the research question and whether the results support or refute the hypothesis being tested. By considering the who, what, when, and why of a study, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of the results and their implications. Additionally, it can help to evaluate the study's strengths and weaknesses and determine how applicable the findings may be to other populations or contexts. Interpreting study results. Key steps. Interpreting study results involving several key steps. Understanding the study design. Before interpreting study results, it is important to understand the design of the study. Different types of studies, example, randomized controlled trials, observational studies, case-control studies, have different strengths and limitations, and the interpretation of the results will depend on the study design. Look at the key findings. Identify the main outcomes of the study, such as the primary endpoint or the main effect size. These are typically presented in tables or figures and should be clearly defined in the methods section of the study. Consider the statistical significance. Look at the p-value or confidence interval for the main finding. If the p-value is less than 0.05 or the confidence interval does not include 0 or 1 depending on the measure of the association, the results are statistically significant, which means that the observed effect is unlikely to be due to chance. Consider clinical significance. Even if the results are statistically significant, it is important to consider whether the effect size is clinically meaningful. For example, a small effect size may be statistically significant but not clinically significant. Evaluate potential biases. Bias is a major concern in any research study. Assess whether there are any potential biases in the study that could have influenced the results. This includes factors such as selection bias, measurement bias, and confounding. Look at the study limitations. Consider the limitations of the study and whether they impact the interpretation of the results. For example, a small sample size or a short duration of follow-up may limit the generalizability of the results. Consider the overall context. Finally, consider the overall context of the study and how the results fit into the broader literature. This includes considering the consistency of the study results, previous studies, the potential mechanisms underlying the observed effects, and the potential implication for clinical practice. Interpreting study results involve examining the statistical significance of the findings. P-values and confidence intervals are two common statistical measures used to assess the significance of study results. P-value is a measure of the probability that the observed effect is due to chance. A p-value less than 0.05 or the predetermined significance level is generally considered statistically significant, meaning that the observed effect is unlikely to be due to chance. However, it is important to note that a statistically significant finding does not necessarily imply clinical significance, and it's also possible to have a significant finding but with a small effect size. Confidence intervals. A confidence interval is a range of values that is likely to contain the true population value. For example, a 95% confidence interval means that there is a 95% probability that the true population value falls within the given range. If the confidence interval does not include 0 or 1, depending on the measure of association, the results are statistically significant. A narrow confidence interval indicates a more precise estimate of the true population value, while a wide confidence interval indicates greater uncertainty in the estimate. When interpreting study results, it's important to consider both the p-value and the confidence interval. A statistically significant finding with a narrow confidence interval provide more confidence in the estimate of the true population value. Conversely, a non-significant finding with a wide confidence interval suggests that the study may be underpowered and the results should be interpreted with caution. It is also important to note that p-values and confidence intervals should not be used in isolation, but rather in conjunction with other factors such as study design, sample size, and clinical significance to inform a complete interpretation of the study results. Identifying and addressing study limitation is an important step in ensuring the validity and reliability of research findings. Here are some measures that can be used to assess study limitations that may have been left unmentioned. Critical appraisal tools. There are several critical appraisal tools available that can be used to assess the quality and limitations of a study. These tools help to identify potential limitations such as sample size, study design, and bias. Peer review. Peer review involves having other experts in the field review the study design methods and findings to ensure that all potential limitations have been addressed. Peer review is an important step in identifying unmeasured limitations. Replication. Replication of the study by other researchers can help to identify potential limitations that may have been left unmentioned in the original study. Consultation with experts. Consulting with experts in the field can help to identify potential limitations that may have been overlooked. Experts may have additional knowledge or experience that can help to identify potential limitations. Examination of the study methods. Careful examination of the study methods, including data collection and analysis, can help to identify potential limitations that may have been left unmentioned. Comparison with other studies. Comparing the study findings to other studies in the field can help to identify potential limitations that have been left unmentioned. For example, if the study findings are consistent with other studies in the field, this may be an indication of potential limitation. Transparency. Researchers should be transparent about the limitations of their study and clearly state any potential limitations that may have been left unmentioned. This can help to ensure that the study findings are interpreted and used appropriately. Overall, identifying and addressing potential limitations is an important step in ensuring validity and reliability of research findings. By using these measures, researchers can identify potential limitations that may have been left unmentioned and address them appropriately. Measures to assess study sources cited. Assessing the quality and reliability of sources cited in the study is an important aspect of research. Here are some measures to assess study sources cited. Author credentials. Check the author's qualifications, expertise, and affiliations. Do they have a reputation for accuracy and reliability in the field? Publication credibility. Consider the credibility of the publication where the study was published. Is it a peer-reviewed journal or a reputable conference proceedings? Peer-reviewed journals have a rigorous editorial process that ensure the quality of the research presented. Date of publication. Consider the date of publication of the source. Is it recent enough to be relevant to the current question, or is it outdated and potentially not relevant anymore? Relevance. Evaluate the relevance of the cited sources to the research question. Do they address the research question or provide useful background information? Bias. Assess the potential bias for the cited sources. Are they presenting a balanced view, or do they have a particular agenda or bias that may impact their findings? Citations. Check if the author has provided a comprehensive list of references. Do the cited sources support the arguments presented in the study? Replication. Consider if the study has been replicated by other researchers. Are there other studies that have come to a similar conclusion? By using these measures, you can assess the reliability and validity of the sources cited in the study and make an informed decision about the quality of the research. Summary. Critiquing a manuscript is an important task for researchers, editors, and reviewers who want to evaluate the quality and validity of a written work. Here are some detailed steps on how to critique a manuscript in summary. First, we have to understand the scope of the manuscript. So before starting your critique, it is important to understand the scope and purpose of the manuscript. Is it a research article, a review article, a case report, a commentary? Understanding the scope of the manuscript will help you evaluate its quality and relevance. Evaluate the research question or hypothesis. If the manuscript is a research article, it is important to evaluate the research question or hypothesis. Is the research question or hypothesis clearly stated and well-defined? Does it address an important gap in the knowledge or provide a novel perspective on a topic? Assess the literature review. A good manuscript should include a comprehensive and up-to-date literature review. Does the literature review provide a thorough summary of the relevant research on the topic? Does it identify gaps in the literature or potential limitations of previous studies? Evaluate the methods. The methods section is a critical component of a research manuscript. Does the methods section provide sufficient detail on how the study was conducted? Are the methods appropriate for the research question or hypothesis? Are there any potential sources of bias in the study design or data collection methods? Evaluate the results. The results section should provide a clear, concise summary of the study findings. Are the results presented in a logical and easy to understand manner? Do the results support the research question or hypothesis? Are the results statistically significant and are the effect sizes clinically meaningful? Assess the discussion and conclusions. The discussion section should interpret the study results and place them in the context of the broader literature. Are the conclusions well supported by the study finding? Do the conclusions provide a novel perspective on the topic or identify new directions for future research? Are there any potential limitations of the study that should be acknowledged? Consider the writing style. The writing style of a manuscript can greatly affect its readability and impact. Is the writing clear and concise? Are the ideas presented in a logical and organized manner? Is the language appropriate for the intended audience? Look for potential ethical concerns. It is important to consider whether the manuscript raises any potential ethical concerns. For example, is there any potential for harm to study participants or other stakeholders? Are there any potential conflict of interest that should be disclosed? Did the authors get IRB approval? By following these steps, you can effectively critique a manuscript and evaluate its quality and validity. Remember, critiquing a manuscript requires careful attention to detail and an understanding of research methods, statistics, and writing skills. Providing constructive feedback can help the authors improve the manuscript and contribute to the advancement of scientific knowledge. Effective techniques for providing constructive feedback when critiquing a manuscript. There are several effective techniques that you can use when providing constructive feedback on a manuscript. Be specific. Avoid generalizations. Provide specific feedback that is relevant to the manuscript. Avoid making generalizations or sweeping statements that may not be helpful or relevant. Provide specific examples from the manuscript to support your feedback. This helps the author understand exactly what you are referring to and what changes they need to make. Focus on the work, not the author. When providing feedback, focus on the work and not the author. Avoid personal attacks or comments that may be taken as such. Avoid using jargon. Use simple language and avoid jargon that the author may not understand. This helps ensure that your feedback is clear and easily understood. Use a positive approach. Start with positive feedback and highlight the strengths of the manuscript before pointing out areas that need improvement. Begin by highlighting the strengths of the manuscript. This helps the author feel more receptive to criticism and helps the author feel motivated to continue working on the manuscript. We can call it a sandwich approach. When pointing out weaknesses, use a sandwich approach by framing criticism between positive feedback. For example, you could start by saying something positive, then provide constructive criticism, and end with a positive feedback again. Offer suggestions. And instead of just pointing out what needs improvement, offer specific suggestions for how the author can make changes. This helps the author understand how to improve their writing. It also helps the author see a clear path forward and feel less overwhelmed. Be respectful. Remember that the author has put a lot of time and effort into their work, and treat them and their manuscript with respect. Be honest but respectful in your feedback. Avoid using overly critical or negative language that could be demotivating. Provide context. Consider the author's goals for the manuscript and provide feedback that is relevant to those goals. Understanding the author's intent will help you provide more targeted feedback. Prioritize feedback based on its importance. Start with the most significant weaknesses, then move to the less important ones. This helps the author focus on the most critical issues first. Be clear and concise. Make sure your feedback is clear and concise. Use simple language and avoid jargons that the author may not understand. This helps ensure that the feedback is clear and easily understood. By balancing criticism with positive feedback and offering specific solutions for improvement, you can provide feedback that is both honest and constructive. To ensure that your feedback is helpful and relevant to the author's goals, it's important to communicate with the author throughout the process. Ask questions to clarify the author's goals and provide feedback that is specific, constructive, and relevant to those goals. By avoiding common mistakes and providing targeted feedback, you can help the author improve their work and achieve their goals. And that's all I have for this presentation. Thank you.
All right. So I thought that was a great, thorough review of what you need to know if you're reviewing literature. If you enjoyed that, great. Be sure to get your contact our CME, whichever one you're utilizing, by going to our website. It'll be up about 5 or 10 minutes after the show ends. I got to give me a chance to upload the most recent sites. And then you can just follow that link and go ahead and, as it showed before, you can just fast forward through the slide or through the video presentation. It'll take you right to the questionnaire in order to secure your CE or whatever you want to get. Now, I will utilize a little bit of the strength of the show because I know there's a lot of viewers on the show live, and plus a lot that will watch this later. One of the things that for me to really make more sense of research would be to get somebody who does research to kind of talk about a specific, how do you do it? There was a great review, but I'm always one of these that I can learn if I can kind of put it together with something more concrete. So if you're doing a study, for instance, how did you set up the study? How do you check for the variability, the P factor, the things that were mentioned in the research talk? So if you're out there, hit me up on UroNurse. Go to our website, and there's an Ask UroNurse button that's direct to my email, or just email me at vic@uronurse.com. Simple enough. And let me know if you're willing to get on and do a little talk about your research or how you set up research. I know there's some researchers out there, and I'd love to have somebody on the show. That's one of the things, whenever I have a new presentation on something, it gets my head thinking about what other things out there we should be talking about that you might find helpful. And again, you guys can always send me a comment and let me know how you like the show, things that you'd like to see on the show. And if you've got, you want to be one of the presenters, feel free to do that. And just to get my thing up here, for those that are thinking about presenting, or maybe you don't know if you could present and you want to learn more about what's involved in running a show like this, I am going to be launching my boot camp, which is going to come out on September the 4th. Boot camp is Rally for Boot Camp, our monthly meeting where we decode the art of video streaming. Enlist for tactical sessions on cutting-edge techniques, intel on industry shifts, and a chance to appear live on my streaming program. Gear up, stay sharp, and gain the upper hand in the streaming battlefield. No experience necessary. All are welcome. There's a limit of only 10 live participants, the first 10 to register, and 200 spots additional available for watching. Questions can be submitted via the comment box. This event will not be streamed on any social media platforms, so no worries about appearing live online. And it all starts September the 4th at 7 p.m. Central Time. Be there to join us on Boot Camp. So there you have it. If you want to learn more about doing streaming or maybe just presenting skills in general, be sure to join us. It's going to be a once a month. We're going to take all sorts of different subjects. And again, the first 10 people that want to be on the video can go ahead and be on. Just go to our uronurse.com area. There's a sign up form. You just click and put your information in there, and we'll get in touch with you and get everything set up for that day. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes because, of course, like everything else I tried new, I never know how it's going to work out in the end. So I throw up some ideas, see what happens, see what people really like. So anyway, I thought it'd be a great idea for those people that are out there because I don't think this is going anywhere. I personally think that this online format for education is the future. And I think that we're going to see more and more of it. And putting out high quality is going to be the whole key. And, you can have a Zoom meeting, but if it's not a really good meeting, people aren't going to stay on. Now, I know you probably miss all my presenters, my experts that are normally with me, because, of course, for these, I don't see a lot of discussion that we can do. In addition, they're not here. But next week, they're going to all be here for this.
Our UroNurse experts delve into the discussion on cranberries and other self-treatment options for urinary tract infections. Are they myth or science?
Cranberries, often touted for their UTI preventive properties, contain compounds that may inhibit bacterial adhesion to the urinary tract.
Clinical evidence supporting their effectiveness is inconclusive.
Similarly, home remedies like increased water intake, vitamin C, and probiotics lack strong scientific validation for treating UTIs. Join us next Saturday at UroNurse.com as our experts will present research on these methods and discuss best practices.
So there you have it. We'll have all the experts. We're going to be presenting all of our research. Is it math? Is it myth or magic, or is it really true science? I'm sure a lot of you out there have your own opinions on it. You'll be able to put those in the comments. We'll be glad to have I think a little bit of a debate that's going to go on during the show to see. So it should be fun. I'm kind of working out that format. But it'll be good to be back live with my experts and kind of doing what we always do, talk amongst each other and get you guys involved too. That's always fun too. Hey, for those of you that are patients or those of you that have patients, which is most of my audience, be sure to check out europatient.com. It comes on after this show at 10:30 a.m. Central Time, where I have a group of stuff that's put together that's just for patients. It's got a lot of the same topics that we talk about on the show, but I kind of have it down to what the patients need to know. So really good to check that out, especially if you're a patient watching this. This is really going to help you out. So it's been going great. I can't believe how well the numbers are on that show. So be sure to check that one out coming up shortly. And with that, I'm glad to say, hey, go out and have a great weekend. Not too much summer left, but we'll see everybody next week on UroNurse.